Hello, everyone, and greetings. This is Michael Delacorte, alias Mike the Microphone, here today to read you another thrilling piece of My Little Pony fanfiction. Now, I know in my last dramatic reading video I told you I would be reading Spider Seas. Well, it's not going to happen today. Instead, I will be reading a nice little number called I'd Like to Be a Tree by Totally Not Furry, edited by Rihadru. Rhea, somebody whose name starts with an R. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a long warning because this story it's something else. Anyways, the following story contains Fluttershy banging Bloomberg. I think that's really what it boils down to, so, that's all you really need to know. It's also extremely descriptive, so for those of you with weak constitutions who don't like to be turned on by weird shit, I suggest you leave, unless you want to have one of the weirdest boners you will ever have in your life. Moving on now. I'd Like to Be a Tree by Totally Not Furry. Fluttershy quickened her pace as she trotted along the trail to Sweet Apple Acres. She glanced over her shoulder again to make sure no pony was following her.
Oh, why am I always so paranoid that I'm being followed when I walk down this road? No pony has ever followed me before, and the animals always listen to me when I tell them to stay home.
Fluttershy returned to a trot as she continued down the path. She could feel her heart beat through her chest, a testament to how nervous she was. Fluttershy had traveled this trail countless times and knew it like the back of her hoof, but something else was rattling her nerves. This might be the last time she would take this path. The pony's mane flowed behind her as a cool spring breeze blew through the orchard. The tree leaves rustled ever so slightly as the branches bounced around. Apples shined in the midday sun, their scent filling the cool air. Fluttershy inhaled and felt herself relax a little as she watched the trees sway in the wind. The sound of a twig breaking behind Fluttershy caused her to freeze. The Pegasi's heart skipped a beat as she realized some pony was following her. Her eyes widened as she quickly spun around to confront them. Nothing but rows of apple trees extended for miles was in view. A minute passed before Fluttershy finally exhaled and adjusted her saddlebags.
Come on, Fluttershy. There's no pony around. Let's just turn around and keep heading to...
Howdy, Fluttershy!
Eep!
Fluttershy's legs locked up and she fell over, knocking her saddlebags aside.
Oops. Sorry for scaring you. You okay, Sugar Cube?
Applejack helped Fluttershy get to her feet, which was quite a challenge since the yellow pony wasn't moving. After tipping Fluttershy up onto her stiff and unresponsive legs, Applejack grabbed Fluttershy's fallen bags and threw them over the shy pony's shoulders.
What you got there?
Applejack gestured toward the dusty saddlebags. Fluttershy started to visibly shake.
Nothing. Nothing, really.
Nothing?
Applejack asked inquisitively. Fluttershy turned away, lowering her head and using her body as a shield from Applejack's gaze.
Yeah, it's, not really, supplies.
All Applejack heard was a soft, high-pitched squeak. Applejack's eyes lowered into an accusing squint.
What are y'all up to?
Fluttershy squeaked even softer as she curled up into a ball on the ground. Applejack stared at her for a few seconds.
Okay, I'll leave you be then. I gotta start packing supplies for our trip to Appaloosa anyhow.
Applejack left Fluttershy and turned to head back to the barn, wondering what in the wide world of Equestria had gotten into that mare. For a couple minutes, Fluttershy didn't move from the protective ball she found herself in. Eventually, a gust of wind filled the orchard with the sound of fluttering leaves and swaying trees. Fluttershy poked her head up as if she had just heard a name called. Looking around her, she saw no pony around and ran off the trail and into the orchard. Fluttershy ran until she reached a section of the farm with younger apple trees. She stopped to look around the expanse of the farm.
Is any pony around?
There was no response except a calm breeze that flowed through the trees. Celestia's sun peeked out from the cloud it had been hiding behind and enveloped the grove with a sparkling sunlight.
So, we are alone.
Again, the only sound Fluttershy heard were apple trees swaying in the wind.
Oh, I'm so relieved. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't see you again, Bloomberg.
Fluttershy trotted quickly over to the sprightly apple tree. He was young, but strong, the first of his grove to bloom. His leaves shined a deep green and his bark a healthy brown. A breeze caused the tree's branches to sway as if Bloomberg was waving at Fluttershy. A blossom slowly drifted down from the upper branches and landed near Fluttershy's feet. Fluttershy's chinks went pink.
Oh, that's, awfully nice of you, Bloomberg. You don't look too bad yourself.
Fluttershy walked up and nuzzled the tree. The rough, uneven bark felt amazing against Fluttershy's furry cheek. As she pulled away, bits of bark got caught in her mane.
Oh, Bloomberg, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? You leave for Appaloosa this week and we might never see each other again.
A strong gust burst through the orchard, sending the trees around Fluttershy into a frenzy. She backed away from Bloomberg and threw her quivering hooves over her head to protect herself. As she looked up, she saw that Bloomberg only gently swayed. His branches danced around gracefully, making music amongst the chaos. In the madness stirred up by the wind, Bloomberg was calm, just like the first time Fluttershy had met him. And time rewind. A gust of wind almost knocked Fluttershy over as she ran. She landed on her front hooves and felt a strong pain shoot up her leg. The trees around her in Sweet Apple Acres had never looked this scary, this intense, this wild. Fluttershy got to her feet and winced at the pain. She kept moving forward with a limp, scared to think of what the trees would do to her if she stayed put any longer. What was supposed to be a relaxing nap on the middle of the farm turned into a nightmare as vicious storm clouds appeared out of nowhere. A weather system moved over the Everfree Forest faster than the weather team could contain it, and it was wreaking havoc on the farm. The gusty winds turned the once comforting grove of apple trees into a violent obstacle course of hazardous roots and fallen branches. Fluttershy had woken up when a branch crashed down on her tail. Only after wiping away the leaves blown in her face had Fluttershy realized that she was in danger and started to run. The yellow Pegasus limped along, fighting back the tears forming in her eyes. She had to find shelter, but where could she turn to? She was surrounded on all sides by huge, gigantic, terrifying, enormous, branch-waving, splinter-giving, fast-moving, scaring noise-making, could-hurt a pony in one! Fluttershy thought her eyes were betraying her. In the middle of the orchard, a solitary tree stood gently swaying in contrast to the chaos around it. It seemed safe, inviting, comforting. The smooth movements of the branches were calling to Fluttershy, wanting to protect her from the storm. Fluttershy limped her way over to Bloomberg and crawled into a ball at the base of the tree. The roots cradled her, hugging her close in the wind. The creaking of the branches played a lullaby that drowned out the cacophony of wind. The ground was soft and warm, soothing Fluttershy's nerves and clearing her thoughts. Fluttershy felt warm in the chilly air. She felt safe. Fluttershy stayed curled in Bloomberg's roots for hours and hobbled home when the weather subsided. The next day, Fluttershy came back with a lily blossom to give her thanks. However, when she approached the tree, her body failed her. She couldn't move, she couldn't speak, and all she could do was stare at the strong, little tree. Slowly, the timid pony walked to Bloomberg and gave the tree a short little kiss. An apple blossom fell off one of Bloomberg's branches and landed in front of Fluttershy. She tried to turn her head as she blushed, but her body wasn't responding to her thoughts. Instead, her body's desires were taking over. Fluttershy moved closer as her body knew the only one true way to reward this marvelous, marvelous tree. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And fast forward to present. Fluttershy had only met Bloomberg 2 years ago, but she felt Bloomberg knew more about herself than any pony else in Ponyville. Bloomberg was Fluttershy's first, and they had spent many intimate afternoons together. She wanted to be with him forever, but he was leaving for a new home, far away from Ponyville. Above the whirling winds, the gentle bristles of the leaves and a passing breeze could be heard. Fluttershy, whose hooves had crept up over her head as she shivered in fear at the resurfaced memory, lowered them to the ground and stared at Bloomberg. He was shining. Rays of light highlighted every groove in the trunk, every twirl in the bark, every leaf on the branches. Bloomberg looked majestic. For the first time that day, Fluttershy felt relieved and relaxed. The Pegasus smiled as she dropped her saddlebags and started to nuzzle the tree. The uneven grooves felt electric on Fluttershy's neck as she moved her head about the trunk. Fluttershy moved her body forward as she kept brushing herself up against Bloomberg. The firmness against her coat traveled down her body to her rump. Fluttershy ground her cutie mark into the tree, sending a tingle down her spine. Fluttershy reluctantly pulled away. She shivered as the chills that coursed through her body subsided. Her face was now a shade of orange as her yellow fur blended with her flush-red face. Fluttershy's breathing picked up a bit and her deep breaths were clearly audible. Bloomberg stayed silent.
I still can't believe you're the shy one when we do this.
Fluttershy giggled. Fluttershy teased the tree with her tail, quickly swishing it back and forth to tickle the trunk. While she teased, her pink tail caught onto the trunk of the tree and would tug her tail whenever the Pegasus moved her rump. Pleasure and pain shot up Fluttershy's rear, which stimulated the aroused pony even more. Fluttershy jumped up on 2 hooves to embrace the tree with a quick hug and nuzzle, before she dove in for a deep, passionate kiss. Okay. Fluttershy's hooves moved up and down the sides of Bloomberg's trunk. She loved the feeling of her fur moving over the rigid bumps and grooves in the bark. Fluttershy's nose took in the scent of fresh apples and tree bark, which sent her into a fury as she tightened her embrace. Fluttershy moaned slightly as her tongue caressed the tree, swirling about the trunk and exploring the cracks in the bark. Bloomberg tasted of apples and tree sap. A quick breeze lifted Fluttershy's pink mane and whisked it forward, wrapping around the tree in a hug of its own. The breeze pushed the pony closer to Bloomberg. Her chest pressed against the trunk. The sensation sent Fluttershy's heart into a flurry as she took a deep breath. Her stomach contacted the tree. Fluttershy couldn't help but moan out a bit louder. Finally, her groin met the tree. Fluttershy's eyes rolled into the back of her head as her knees grew weak. Slowly, Fluttershy began to grind her hips up and down into the tree. Her moaning grew louder as she increased her pace. A steady rhythm sent pleasure racing through Fluttershy's nerves as her groin grew flush with heat. After a minute, Fluttershy broke her hug and pulled away apologetically.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just I'm going to get something from my bag. I mean, if that's all right with you.
The tree moved gracefully in the breeze. Fluttershy smiled and walked over to her saddlebags. After sifting through one bag, she found what she was searching for, a piece of sandpaper. Fluttershy walked around to the other side of Bloomberg, where a lone branch had been sawed in half. The remaining branch, which was almost exactly horizontal to the ground, was at a height just below Fluttershy's chin. Fluttershy sat down right next to the limb and hummed a tune as she began to sand. And so concludes this part 1 of Totally Not Furries, I'd Like to Be a Tree. As we can already see, Fluttershy really, really, really likes that tree. Oh my god. I should have just read Spider Seas. Anyways, I will be doing part 2 in just a few minutes. And I will see some of you. God. If you want to see part 2, click on the annotation. God. This is so bad. I'll see you all in part 2.